In the shadowed shores of Galilee, where the restless waves kiss the rugged rocks, a man's destiny was forged in fire and faith. Peter, once a simple fisherman, would rise to become a thunderous voice that would shake the foundations of the ancient world. With hands calloused by toil and a heart brimming with fervor, he was chosen to be the rock upon which a new faith would be built. This is the story of Peter, the fisher of thunder, a tale of courage and doubt, of storms weathered both on the sea and within his soul. From the nets of his humble beginnings to the hulls of divine prophecy, follow his journey of transformation, a journey that echoes through the ages, inspiring millions. Prepare yourself for a saga of faith, power, and redemption. The legend of Peter begins now. Chapter 1. The Call of the Sea. The sun was just beginning to rise over the calm, yet restless waters of the Sea of Galilee. The horizon glowed with hues of amber and gold, casting a soft light over the small fishing village nestled along its shore. The morning air was crisp and filled with the salty tang of the sea, carrying the distant cries of seabirds awakening to a new day. Among the fishermen preparing their boats was a man named Simon. His hands were rough and calloused from years spent casting nets and hauling in the day's catch. His eyes, sharp and weathered, scanned the horizon with a mixture of hope and weariness. Life on the sea was never easy, but it was honest work, a rhythm he knew well, dictated by the tides and the changing winds. Simon was a man of the earth and water, bound to the world he understood. Yet, on this morning, a strange restlessness stirred within him. A whisper carried on the breeze that felt like a summons from beyond the waves. As he pushed his small boat into the gentle surf, a figure appeared on the shore. This man was unlike any Simon had seen before. His presence was commanding yet calm, his eyes burning with a fierce yet gentle light. Without hesitation, he spoke words that cut through the stillness like a crack of thunder. "Follow me." The words echoed in Simon's mind. Who was this man? Why did his voice hold such power, such certainty? Simon hesitated. The life he knew was safe, familiar. The nets, the boat, the endless sea. These were his home, his security. But something deep within stirred, a pull stronger than any storm that had ever rocked his boat. It was a call to leave behind the known and step into a destiny far greater than he could imagine. "Leave your nets," the man said again, with an urgency that brooked no refusal. And so, Simon made a choice that would change everything. He cast aside his fishing nets and stepped forward to follow the stranger, beginning a journey that would transform him from a humble fisherman into Peter, the rock, the foundation upon which a new faith would be built. This was no ordinary path, but one filled with storms, miracles, doubt, and courage. From the quiet shores of Galilee to the roaring storms of life, Peter's story was only beginning. The call of the sea was but the first thunder in a storm that would shake the world. Chapter 2. Fisherman of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee stretched out endlessly beneath the vast sky, its waters shimmering like a mirror reflecting the heavens. For years, Simon had known these waters intimately. The way the wind shaped the waves, the rhythm of the tides, and the hidden places where the fish gathered. The sea was both his livelihood and his home, a place of beauty and danger intertwined. Each day, before dawn, Simon would set out in his small wooden boat, casting his nets with skill honed by countless mornings. The labor was relentless, pulling heavy nets, mending torn ropes, battling the cold and storms. But it was honest work, a life sustained by the sea's bounty. Yet beneath his rugged exterior, Simon's heart bore dreams and fears alike. Dreams of a life beyond the simple catch, fears of failure, and the crushing weight of responsibility toward his family and community. The sea was unforgiving, and many nights ended in empty nets and weary souls. One evening, as the sun dipped low, casting a fiery glow across the water, Simon sat on the shore, contemplating the mysteries of his life. He remembered the stranger's words, the command to follow, to leave everything behind. The memory stirred a tempest within him, greater than any sea storm. Was it madness to abandon all he had known? Or was it courage? The courage to believe in something more? In that moment, Simon was not just a fisherman. He was a man standing on the edge of transformation. The Sea of Galilee, with all its vastness and uncertainty, became a symbol of his journey, a journey from doubt to faith, from ordinary to extraordinary. As the stars began to shine overhead, Simon resolved to embrace the path before him. The nets might be left behind, but the strength and spirit forged by the sea would remain. For in the heart of a fisherman lay the soul of a leader, bold, unyielding, and ready to face the storms ahead. Chapter 3. A Thunderous Confession. Days turned into weeks as Simon, now called Peter, journeyed alongside Jesus and the other disciples. Each step he took was laden with wonder and uncertainty, his heart pounding with a mixture of awe and fear. Jesus spoke with an authority that stirred the deepest corners of Peter's soul. He witnessed miracles, waters calmed by a mere word, the blind given sight, the broken healed. And yet, what struck Peter most was the powerful truth that radiated from Jesus' presence. One evening, as the sky bled hues of crimson and gold, the group found themselves alone by the shores of the Sea of Galilee. The air was thick with anticipation, and the soft lapping of waves was the only sound accompanying their thoughts. Jesus turned to his followers and asked a question that would echo forever through the ages. "Who do you say that I am?" The question seemed simple, but carried a weight so heavy it pressed upon each heart like a storm ready to break. The disciples exchanged uncertain glances, some hesitant, others searching deep within their souls. Peter, feeling a sudden surge of courage, stepped forward. His voice was steady but charged with a fierce conviction as he declared, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." The words, spoken with raw honesty and faith, cracked through the silence like thunder. In that moment, the sea itself seemed to hold its breath. Jesus' gaze locked with Peter's, his eyes shining with both kindness and a solemn understanding of the road ahead. "Blessed are you, Simon son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." Peter's heart pounded fiercely. He was the rock, the foundation. But what did it mean? The weight of this revelation pressed upon him like the heaviest nets he had ever hauled from the sea. He realized that this was no ordinary mission. It was a divine calling that demanded courage, sacrifice, and unyielding faith. Yet beneath the triumph, doubts and fears crept quietly. Could he, a simple fisherman with flaws and failures, truly bear this responsibility? What storms awaited him on this path? The answers were unclear, but the resolve in his soul began to solidify. Peter's confession was more than words. It was a turning point. It marked the birth of a new chapter, not just for him, but for the world itself. It was a thunderous declaration that would echo through history, calling all to believe and to stand firm in the face of darkness. From that moment on, Peter was transformed. The fisherman was becoming a leader, a voice of faith and strength amid the coming trials. The storm was gathering, but Peter was ready to face whatever destiny lay ahead, armed with faith as mighty as thunder. Chapter 4. Walking on Water. The winds howled across the Sea of Galilee, tossing the waves like wild beasts awakened from slumber. Darkness had fallen, and the small boat carrying Peter and the other disciples struggled against the relentless storm. Each wave crashed against the wooden hull, threatening to swallow them whole in its watery grasp. Peter's hands gripped the sides of the boat, knuckles white with tension. The sea was no longer a friend. It was an adversary, fierce and unforgiving. Fear gnawed at his heart as the night deepened, but amid the chaos, a strange calmness settled within him, a spark of faith that refused to be extinguished. Suddenly, through the sheets of rain and the roaring tempest, a figure appeared on the water, moving toward the boat with an otherworldly grace. At first, the disciples recoiled in terror, thinking it a ghost. But Jesus' voice cut through the storm like a beacon of light. "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter's eyes widened, his heart pounding. The impossible was before him. The Master walking on the turbulent waters, defying nature itself. Summoning every ounce of courage, Peter called out, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus' response was a simple yet powerful invitation. "Come." Without hesitation, Peter stepped out of the boat, his feet touching the surface of the raging sea. For a moment, he walked, his faith carrying him across the stormy waters. But as his gaze faltered, fear crept in. The waves rose higher, and doubt gripped his heart like a crushing weight. Peter began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried. Jesus reached out, his hand firm and steady, pulling Peter back from the abyss. "You have little faith," he said gently. "Why did you doubt?" That night, beneath the stormy sky, Peter learned a lesson that would shape his life forever. Faith is not the absence of fear, but the courage to trust when fear threatens to overwhelm. As the storm subsided and the winds calmed, Peter's heart burned with renewed determination. He was no longer just a fisherman battling the sea. He was a disciple learning to walk on water, to embrace the impossible with unshakable faith. From that moment on, Peter's journey would be marked by miracles and challenges alike, each step drawing him closer to his destiny as the rock upon which the church would stand. Chapter 5. The Rock and the Promise. The words Jesus spoke to Peter echoed endlessly in his heart and mind. "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." It was as if the heavens themselves had spoken, yet the weight of those words settled heavily on Peter's shoulders. Who was he, a simple fisherman from Galilee, to carry such a monumental responsibility? In the quiet solitude of early mornings, before the village stirred to life, Peter would sit by the shore, watching the endless waves crash and roll, pondering the true meaning of the promise. The sea was familiar, its tides predictable and constant. Yet this promise was unlike anything Peter had ever faced. The church, this mysterious new foundation, was to be built on him. But was he strong enough? Could his faith hold firm when storms came? The days that followed were filled with a mixture of hope and doubt. Peter's heart soared with every teaching Jesus shared, and yet trembled at the thought of what was expected of him. He saw the faces of the crowds, hungry for guidance and truth, and felt a growing urgency to lead with courage and compassion. One afternoon, Peter found himself walking along a dusty path with the other disciples. The sun burned overhead, and the weight of his thoughts pressed down like the heat. Suddenly, a beggar approached, worn and desperate, reaching out with trembling hands. Without hesitation, Peter stepped forward, offering his cloak and a comforting word. In that moment, he glimpsed the true essence of Jesus' command. To feed the sheep was to care deeply for the people, to be a shepherd in a world lost and wandering. Yet, even as Peter grew in faith, his human frailty remained. There were nights when doubts gnawed at him, when fear whispered lies that threatened to undo all he believed. The shadow of failure loomed, reminding him of his imperfections. Jesus, knowing the battles within Peter's heart, gently reassured him, "Do not be afraid, Peter. I have chosen you not for your perfection, but for your heart." The promise of the rock was not a call to be flawless, but to be steadfast, to stand firm amid trials, to rise again after every fall. Peter began to understand that the foundation of faith was built not on strength alone, but on resilience and unwavering trust in God. The coming days would test Peter beyond measure. Persecution, betrayal, and heartbreak awaited him. But with each challenge, his spirit was forged stronger. As dawn painted the sky with hues of gold and hope, Peter stood at the edge of the sea once more, ready to embrace the destiny that awaited him. The rock was no longer just a name. It was a promise, a mission, a legacy that would echo through the ages. Peter was ready to be the unshakable foundation of a new era. Chapter 6. The Confession of Faith. The journey of faith is never without its defining moments, those times when the soul is laid bare and truth shines through the shadows of doubt. For Peter, One such moment arrived like a sudden blaze of lightning, illuminating the path ahead with unmistakable clarity. It was in a quiet town nestled between hills and olive groves that Jesus turned to his disciples and asked the question that would forever change the course of their lives. "Who do you say I am?" The disciples exchanged glances, hesitation flickering in their eyes. Some whispered guesses, but none dared to speak the truth aloud. Then Peter stepped forward, his voice steady yet filled with awe. "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." A hush fell over the crowd, the weight of those words settling like a sacred mantle. Jesus looked at Peter with eyes that seemed to see beyond the surface, deep into his heart. "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah," Jesus declared, "for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." Peter felt a surge of emotions, pride, humility, and a profound sense of purpose. This confession was not merely a declaration. It was a covenant, a divine truth binding him to a destiny greater than he had ever imagined. But with this blessing came an unspoken challenge. Peter was to be the foundation, the steadfast rock that would anchor the fledgling community of believers. It was a role fraught with responsibility, demanding unwavering faith and courage in the face of adversity. In the days that followed, Peter's heart swelled with determination. He began to understand that faith was not just belief, it was action, sacrifice, and sometimes suffering. He recalled the times he had faltered, the nights of doubt, the moments when fear had nearly overwhelmed him. Yet, each time he found strength in the promise Jesus had made. The road ahead would be perilous. Peter knew that storms, both literal and figurative, would come. But armed with this confession of faith, he was ready to face whatever trials awaited. As the sun set over the hills, casting long shadows across the land, Peter stood firm, his spirit ignited by the divine revelation. The rock had been named, the foundation laid. The story of the church was just beginning, and Peter was at its heart. Chapter 7. The Storm on the Water. The lake stretched out before them, a vast mirror reflecting the twilight sky. The disciples had boarded the boat to cross to the other side, leaving behind the bustling crowds and the day's teachings. But the peaceful evening soon turned ominous. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and a sudden, fierce wind whipped the surface of the water into angry waves. The boat rocked violently, tossing the men like leaves in a storm. Fear gripped their hearts as the tempest threatened to swallow them whole. Peter, ever the brave soul, tightened his grip on the wooden railing. The sea was no stranger to him. He had battled storms before, but this one felt different, heavier, as if it bore a challenge beyond nature itself. Then, through the raging storm, a figure appeared walking upon the water, steady and calm, defying the very laws that govern the world. It was Jesus, his eyes full of compassion and power. "Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid," he called. Peter's heart surged with a mixture of awe and disbelief. In that moment, he made a choice, a leap of faith. "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water," Peter shouted against the roaring wind. "Come," Jesus replied simply. Peter stepped out of the boat, his feet finding a strange new footing on the surface of the lake. For a brief moment, he walked steadily toward Jesus, each step a miracle of faith overcoming nature. But then doubt flickered. The wind howled louder, the waves crashed higher, and Peter's eyes shifted from Jesus to the storm. Fear surged in his chest. He began to sink. "Lord, save me," he cried, reaching out as the water closed over his feet. Jesus grasped his hand instantly, steadying him. "You have little faith. Why did you doubt?" Together they climbed back into the boat, the storm calming as quickly as it had arisen. The disciples looked on, awestruck and trembling, knowing they had witnessed a divine power beyond understanding. This moment was more than a miracle. It was a profound lesson for Peter and all who followed. Faith could walk on water, but only when eyes remained fixed on the source of all strength. Peter's journey was marked by such storms, but also by the divine hand that lifted him each time he faltered. The rock was tested by waves, but never broken. Chapter 8. The Fiery Trial. The days that followed the storm on the water brought a new kind of tempest, one not of wind and waves, but of opposition and peril. Peter, once just a fisherman from Galilee, now stood at the forefront of a growing movement, preaching a message that stirred hearts but threatened established powers. It was during these tense times that Peter faced the most daunting challenge yet: persecution. The authorities who saw the new faith as a threat unleashed their fury upon the disciples. Arrests, imprisonments, and threats became daily realities. One evening, as dusk cloaked the city in shadows, Peter found himself surrounded by hostile faces. The air was thick with menace, but instead of cowering, Peter's spirit ignited with a fiery courage. He remembered Jesus' words, "Upon this rock I will build my church," and felt a strength beyond his own fill his soul. Thrown into a dark, cold prison cell, Peter lay chained and weary. But even in the depths of confinement, his faith burned bright. He envisioned the church growing, a mighty fortress of believers standing tall against the storms of opposition. Whispers of his boldness spread through the city. Friends risked their own safety to bring him food and encouragement. Peter's voice, though silenced behind bars, echoed in the hearts of many. He recalled every moment he had walked with Jesus, the teachings, the miracles, the trials, and found renewed resolve. His suffering was not punishment, but a forge, shaping him into the leader he was destined to be. One night, as the moon cast pale light through the prison window, a miraculous event unfolded. An angel appeared, breaking Peter's chains and leading him out of the prison gates. The city slept unaware that their greatest threat had escaped. But Peter's escape was not a retreat. It was a testament to the divine protection over his mission. He returned to his fellow believers, stronger and more determined than ever to carry the message of hope. Through fiery trials, Peter transformed from a simple fisherman into an unshakable pillar of faith, a living rock upon which the church would be built. His story was a beacon to all who faced darkness, reminding them that true faith shines brightest amid the flames. Chapter 9. The Vision of the Cross. As Peter's journey unfolded, his faith was tested not only by storms and persecution, but also by profound spiritual revelations. One night, in the quiet solitude of prayer, Peter experienced a vision that would forever alter his understanding of his mission and the world. In this vision, a great sheet descended from heaven, filled with animals, clean and unclean, familiar and strange. A voice commanded him, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Confused and troubled, Peter protested, "Surely not, Lord. I have never eaten anything impure or unclean." But the voice answered again, "Do not call anything impure that God has made clean." This vision was not merely about food. It was a profound lesson about the breaking down of barriers. It revealed to Peter that the message of salvation was meant not just for the Jews, but for all peoples, Gentiles included. This revelation was revolutionary, shaking the foundations of centuries-old traditions and prejudices. Peter realized that his role was to be a bridge between worlds, opening the doors of faith wide to every nation and every soul. The weight of this divine message settled upon him, inspiring courage to proclaim a gospel that transcended boundaries. It was a call to unity, compassion, and radical inclusion, a new covenant for a new era. Peter's vision prepared him for the path ahead, a path that would lead him far beyond the familiar shores of Galilee to the farthest corners of the earth. Through this heavenly encounter, the apostle embraced a mission greater than himself, becoming a true shepherd of a global flock. Chapter 10. The Charge to Lead. After the powerful vision that forever expanded Peter's understanding of God's plan, his role among the disciples grew ever clearer and more demanding. The quiet moments of reflection soon gave way to the weight of a sacred responsibility. Jesus, knowing the path Peter must walk, prepared to entrust him with a mission that would shape the future of the church itself. One early morning, as the sun cast its first golden rays over the hills, Jesus gathered his closest followers beside the calm waters of the Sea of Galilee. The air was still, filled with an unspoken anticipation. Jesus turned his gaze toward Peter, whose heart pounded with a mix of reverence and unease. "Simon, son of John," Jesus said, using Peter's birth name in a moment heavy with meaning, "do you love me?" Peter, caught off guard, responded earnestly, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." 3 times, Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" And 3 times Peter affirmed his love. Each time, Jesus gave a charge. "Feed my lambs. Tend my sheep. Feed my sheep." These simple words bore a profound weight, a call to nurture, to protect, and to lead the growing flock of believers who would soon spread far beyond Galilee. This was no ordinary task. It was a sacred covenant, a divine appointment to shepherd the faithful through trials and triumphs alike. Peter's mind raced. Could he, a once impulsive fisherman, truly guide this vast and diverse family? The doubts flickered, but deep within, a fierce resolve ignited. The rock upon which the church would be built was not merely a title. It was a promise to stand strong amid storms, a commitment to care for the vulnerable and lead with humility and strength. In the days that followed, Peter threw himself into his mission with renewed vigor. He spoke boldly in the streets, comforted the fearful, and challenged those who opposed the new faith. His leadership was tested again and again, through persecution, imprisonment, and moments of personal failure. But his unwavering faith kept him anchored. Peter's journey was not solitary. He leaned on the teachings of Jesus, the support of his fellow disciples, and the growing community of believers who looked to him as a beacon of hope. Through every challenge, the charge to lead burned brightly in his heart, a guiding light that would carry him through even the darkest nights. This moment by the sea marked not only a turning point for Peter, but the dawn of a new era, the birth of the church's first shepherd, whose footsteps would echo across centuries. Chapter 11. The Path of Sacrifice. Peter's journey as the leader of the early church was marked by triumphs, but also by immense challenges and sacrifices. The path he walked was never easy. Each step forward demanded courage, resilience, and an unshakable faith in the face of adversity. From the moment he accepted Jesus' charge to feed his sheep, Peter found himself confronting forces that sought to extinguish the light of the gospel. Religious leaders, political powers, and hostile crowds challenged him at every turn. Yet, Peter remained steadfast, his voice ringing out with conviction and hope. His sacrifices were many. Peter endured imprisonment, rejection, and physical torment. Yet through every trial, his spirit remained unbroken. He understood that suffering was part of the calling, a refining fire that shaped his character and deepened his devotion. Peter's leadership inspired countless believers. His sermons ignited hearts, bringing thousands into the fold. But with growth came new burdens, the need to guide, protect, and unify a diverse community under constant threat. Despite moments of doubt and fear, Peter's faith never wavered. He sought solace in prayer, drawing strength from the memory of Jesus' teachings and the promise of eternal life. His journey was a testament to the power of sacrifice, showing that true leadership often demands giving up comfort, security, and even life itself for a greater cause. Peter's story became a beacon for all who face hardship for their beliefs, a reminder that courage and faith can overcome the darkest trials. As he walked the path of sacrifice, Peter's legacy was forged, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. Chapter 12. The Miracles of Faith. Peter's ministry was marked not only by his words, but by acts of miraculous power that confirmed the message he preached and inspired awe among believers and skeptics alike. These miracles were signs of divine authority, proof that the Spirit of God worked through him to heal, restore, and bring hope where there was despair. One of the most unforgettable moments came when Peter healed a man who had been crippled from birth. Day after day, The man sat by the temple gate, begging for alms, unnoticed and forgotten by the crowd. But Peter, moved by compassion and empowered by faith, declared, "In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise and walk." To the astonishment of all, the man's feet and ankles grew strong, and he stood, walking and leaping and praising God. The temple erupted in amazement and praise, and many hearts were opened to the gospel through this powerful sign. Peter's miracles were not merely wonders. They were a testament to the living presence of Christ among his followers. Each healing, each deliverance, reinforced the truth that faith could conquer sickness, fear, and even death itself. Yet these miracles also brought challenges. Peter faced growing opposition from religious authorities threatened by the spread of this new faith and its signs. He was arrested and interrogated, yet he boldly proclaimed the gospel, refusing to be silenced. Through all, Peter's faith remained unshakable. The miracles served as a reminder of the divine power backing his mission and a source of encouragement to the early church. Peter's story teaches us that faith, when coupled with action and courage, can bring forth miracles that transform lives and shape history. Chapter 13. The Trial of Faith. As the early church began to grow rapidly, spreading the message of Christ beyond Jerusalem's walls, opposition soon followed in equal measure. The powerful religious authorities, threatened by this new faith that challenged their influence and traditions, sought to stamp it out with force. Peter, now a leading figure among the apostles, found himself at the center of this storm. It was not long before Peter and his fellow believers were arrested and brought before the Sanhedrin, the ruling council of Jewish elders and priests. The chamber was heavy with tension. The air was thick with disdain and suspicion. The council members sat in judgment, their eyes cold and accusing. The fate of the apostles rested in their hands. Peter, however, stood tall. Though his heart raced and the weight of the moment pressed down on him, his voice was steady and clear. He knew that to deny his faith now would mean betraying everything he had come to believe through his time with Jesus: the miracles, the resurrection, the promise of eternal life. When commanded to renounce Christ and cease preaching in his name, Peter's response was fearless. "We must obey God rather than men." His words thundered through the hall, shaking the council with their boldness. It was a declaration not only of defiance, but of unwavering conviction. The council threatened him, warned of punishment, but Peter remained resolute. He knew the path of faith was a road paved with trials, suffering, and sacrifice. But he also knew that this was the path chosen by his Lord, who endured betrayal, torture, and death for the salvation of mankind. Peter's trial was not just a legal proceeding. It was a spiritual battle, a contest of wills between those clinging to old power and a new movement fueled by the Spirit of God. The courage Peter displayed inspired his fellow believers and struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. In the days following, Peter continued his mission with renewed fervor, emboldened by his trial. His story became a beacon to early Christians, a testament that faith demands bravery in the face of opposition, and that true belief cannot be silenced by earthly powers. Peter's trial teaches us that faith is not passive. It is a force that challenges, confronts, and ultimately transforms. It is a call to stand firm when tested, to speak truth even when threatened, and to hold fast to hope when darkness surrounds us. Through Peter's example, we see that the trials we face are not the end of our story. They're the forging fires that shape us into stronger, braver souls. Chapter 14. The Journey to Rome. Peter's journey to Rome marked a pivotal chapter in his life and in the history of the early church. Rome, the mighty capital of an empire that spanned continents, was a city unlike any other, its streets teeming with power, decadence, and danger. To step into this colossal city was to enter the very heart of worldly authority, a place where the fate of empires was decided and where the message of a humble carpenter from Nazareth faced its greatest challenge. Upon arrival, Peter found a city both magnificent and merciless. The grand marble temples and forums contrasted sharply with the plight of the poor and the persecuted. Christianity was still a fledgling faith here, often forced into the shadows by suspicion and outright hostility. But Peter came not to cower, but to ignite a flame that would never be extinguished. He traveled through the narrow alleys and bustling marketplaces, gathering believers in secret assemblies. These hidden churches became sanctuaries of hope and fellowship, where Peter taught the gospel with passion and authority. His sermons spoke of love, redemption, and the promise of eternal life, drawing many hearts toward the light. But the presence of Peter did not go unnoticed. Emperor Nero, suspicious and volatile, viewed Christians as scapegoats for the empire's woes. Under his brutal reign, waves of persecution crashed over the Christian community. Peter knew that danger lurked behind every corner, yet he refused to abandon his flock. Instead, he embraced the mission with renewed zeal, willing to face any trial for the sake of the faith. During these years, Peter's leadership was instrumental in organizing the scattered Christian communities. He wrote letters filled with encouragement, exhorting believers to remain steadfast despite suffering. His words resonated deeply, offering strength and guidance in times of fear and uncertainty. As years passed, the weight of age and hardship bore heavily upon him, but Peter's spirit remained unbroken. He faced imprisonment and hardship, yet continued preaching and ministering to the faithful. His ultimate sacrifice loomed ahead, a testament to the depth of his commitment. Peter's time in Rome was not just about survival. It was about laying the very foundation of what would become the universal church. His courage in the face of tyranny and his unwavering faith inspired generations to come. The story of Peter's journey to Rome reminds us that true faith often leads us into the greatest trials, but also offers the greatest triumphs. It challenges us to stand firm, even when the world around us seems hostile and unyielding. Chapter 15, The Final Sacrifice. As the sun set on Peter's life, the city of Rome trembled with a mixture of tension and anticipation. The mighty empire, vast and unyielding, faced a force it could neither conquer nor control, the unbreakable faith of a humble fisherman turned apostle. Peter's journey from the shores of Galilee to the heart of the empire was reaching its destined climax. Captured by the Roman authorities amid Emperor Nero's fierce persecution of Christians, Peter found himself imprisoned in the dark, cold confines of a Roman dungeon. Yet, even in chains, his spirit soared with unyielding strength. The flickering torchlight cast shadows on the stone walls, but Peter's heart burned bright with the fire of conviction, a flame that no prison could contain. During his imprisonment, Peter was visited by fellow believers who sought his wisdom and encouragement. To them, he was a rock, steadfast and unshakable. He spoke of hope beyond suffering, of a kingdom not built by human hands but eternal and divine. His words were a balm to weary souls, a call to perseverance in the face of crushing odds. Peter's impending fate was known to all. He chose to meet death on his own terms, requesting to be crucified upside down, a symbol of his humility and reverence for Christ. To die as the Savior did was a burden he did not claim for himself. Instead, he embraced a death that spoke of profound devotion and unyielding faith. On the day of his martyrdom, the city buzzed with unease. The crowd gathered, some with scorn, others with silent admiration. Peter's final moments were a testament to the power of belief, fearless, dignified, and filled with grace. His voice, though weakened by age and suffering, carried the strength of a lifetime dedicated to the gospel. Peter's death was not the end, but the beginning of a legacy that would echo through the ages. The church, built on the foundation of his unwavering faith, grew into a mighty force that would change the course of history. His story became a beacon for generations of believers, a reminder that true faith demands courage, sacrifice, and unshakable hope. As we reflect on Peter's final sacrifice, we are called to examine our own lives. What does it mean to stand firm in our beliefs? How do we face our trials and fears? Peter's example challenges us to rise above doubt, to embrace our calling with courage, and to trust in a higher purpose beyond ourselves. Thank you for journeying with us through the epic life of Peter, the thunderous fisherman. May his story inspire your own path of faith, resilience, and devotion. We are grateful for your company and invite you to continue with us in this series, where the extraordinary lives of the apostles await to be discovered. And so ends the incredible journey of Peter, the fisher of thunder. From the quiet shores of Galilee to the heart of an empire, his story is one of transformation, courage, and unshakable faith. Through every storm he faced, Peter stood firm, becoming the rock upon which the church was built, a legacy that still echoes across the world today. Thank you for joining us on this epic voyage through the life of one of history's most remarkable apostles. We are honored to share this story with you, and we invite you to continue exploring the lives of the apostles with us. If you enjoyed this tale of faith and adventure, please subscribe, like, and share. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. Until next time, may your own journey be filled with courage, hope, and the power of unwavering belief.